Brianna Ghey was just 16 when she was tragically stabbed to death earlier this year on February the 11th. A boy and a girl, who were both 15 at the time of Brianna's murder, are currently standing trial at Manchester Crown Court. In this video, I'll be taking you through the testimony as heard in court of two dog walkers who were the first on the scene that day, and their experience having come face to face with Brianna's alleged killers. Now, just before we start today's video, it's important for me to mention that due to reporting restrictions enforced by the court and also the age of the suspects concerned, the names have been redacted. You'll hear the suspects referred to in this video as Girl X and Boy Y. Footage of the police interview is now being played to the court. The footage is played and shows Miss Veese sitting alone on a sofa. She says, "We went under the bridge and across the car park. There were no cars in the car park, which is unusual on a Saturday. It's normally busy. You feel safe walking down there. We were about a kilometre in. We're avid walkers and we know the path very well. I said to Andrew, 'Oh, there's some people ahead.' I saw a man in a black coat. I thought he was walking towards us. Andrew tried to get the dog that was off the lead on the lead and she wouldn't come to us. Eventually, he got hold of her. I saw the man bend over and thought I saw the silhouette of a dog. I saw the man and the woman walk across the path and into the field. They were walking. I thought, okay, they've gone into the field. That's an etiquette thing that will happen on that path. But then they started running. It wasn't a sprint and it wasn't a walk. The man had a longish coat on, not ankle length, but above his knees. He had his hood up. He stooped as he was running. The woman, she was slightly ahead of him. She looked at me. I said, oh, they've left something. Then I thought, it's a prank. It's a blow-up doll. She was so white, there were smears of blood like a handprint or fingerprints of marks. I crouched down to look, and I didn't want to look anymore. It looked like her face was covered in blood. My husband went, it's okay, we're going to help you. I think she's dead. She looked like a blow-up doll. Her body was in the wrong position. I kept saying, are you sure it's not a dummy, Andrew? These are real shoes, Andrew. She wasn't dressed for walking on the path. She wasn't dressed warmly. Miss Veese says she grabbed her dog and rang 999 and said there's been a serious attack. Miss Veese describes how she ran back to the car park about half a mile away. She continues, the first people were the people we saw over the body. I saw the man over the body. Miss Veese says of the scene prior to discovering Brianna, it was beautiful, it was quiet, it was still, it was dry. I thought, they're walking towards us. My priority was getting our dog on a lead. They haven't come any closer. I thought they'd put their dog on a lead because I'd seen him stoop. We started walking, I saw them go across the path, which is only a few feet wide, and into the field. I thought, how polite is that? She describes the clothes Boy Y was wearing and his appearance. The victim, she looked like she'd come from some sort of party or something. He didn't look like he'd come from a party. He looked a bit grubby. I can't say he looked trampy or anything, but he didn't look clean. He didn't look unnormal like he was homeless or anything, but he wasn't dressed like she was. My first thought was that it was a blow-up doll and they're playing a prank on us, laughing in the hedges. She is asked how far away she was when she first spotted the teens, and replies, 100 feet at most. It was clear. When I first saw them, I thought they were walking towards me, but when I looked up, he was stooping. I thought he was putting a dog on a lead. The next time I saw him, he had his back to me. Miss V says she could see the front of him when he was stooping over. I thought my view was he stopped and put a dog on a lead. She was crossways in the path. I was convinced I'd seen him put a caramel-coloured cockapoo-sized dog on a lead. I was aware he had someone with him, but I couldn't determine who it was until I got nearer, and I saw them cross the path and walk along the farmer's field parallel with the path. At first they appeared to be walking, but they started to run. It wasn't a sprint, it was more of a lollop. It was so suspicious. They obviously saw us and thought they have to go. The detective asks if she could hear them say anything. She replies, no, they were silent. Miss Veese then began running back to the car park and did not see them again. She says the teens would have been a maximum of 7 foot away from her at one stage. The girl turned and looked at me and made eye contact with me. They started moving slightly out away from the hedge. I turned around and walked with the dog and saw the girl on the floor. It looked like maybe a big bag had been dumped or something. She was in such a funny position. My priority was the girl. I can't say she's dead for sure, but I thought she was dead. I was very frightened. I thought we need to get onto the police straight away. Miss V says there was a bag alongside Brianna by a bench. She reports that her husband was saying, "We're going to get you some help," and tied one of their dogs to a tree. Miss V then returned to the car park and warned others not to approach the scene. I'd been there a couple of minutes and then the first police officer came. He said to stay on the car park as the ambulance would be arriving. I stayed on the car park. 2 dog walkers, a couple, walked towards me. I said, "Don't go down there, someone's been attacked, it's awful." They said, "We'll go and wait with your husband in case he needs any help." Miss Weiss is asked if the boy was carrying anything. She said, "I could not see." She says one of his hands was holding his hood, which was up, and she could not see his other hand. Miss Weiss says the girl stared and carried on moving away from her. Miss Weiss is brought into the witness box where she'll be asked questions by prosecuting barrister Miss Brianna Ghey. Miss Ghey asks, "I just want to clarify some positions with you, where you were and where other people were at the time you came upon the scene." Miss Weiss is shown photographs taken in the area. Miss Ghey asks about the position where she came across Brianna. She was lying across the path effectively in a contorted position. Miss Weiss replies, "Yes." "You didn't touch her or move her at all?" "No, I did not." Miss Weiss confirms she was with her 2 dogs and her husband Andrew. Now, you thought the male might be walking towards you. I want to ask you where you were when you saw that. Miss Weiss replies, "I was approximately 100 foot from where we found the body." "Let me ask you where the male was when you first saw him." Miss Weiss points out a location beside some police tape on one of the photographs. "I think you were concerned to get the dogs on a lead. That took your attention away. And when you looked back, you saw this male bending over. Was he in the same position or a different position?" "He was in the same position." "Are you able to tell us in which direction he was bending?" "He was pointing towards me, bending over the victim Brianna's body." "Was her body in between you and him or behind him?" "In front of him." "Let me ask about the female. Where was she when you first saw her?" "To the left of the male, to his left." "And how close to him was she standing?" "I would say no more than a few inches, a foot at most." "When you first saw her, in which direction was she facing?" "I couldn't be certain which direction she was facing." "You told the police, they then moved into the adjacent field. I want to ask you where it was they entered the field." Miss Weiss points out a photograph. "I believe they entered from the left of the bench, from one of those entry points there. They would have entered the field through one of those entry points." "Do you recall which of them entered the field first?" "I don't recall." "Having entered the field, which direction did they go?" "They went to the right, parallel with the fence, to their right, parallel to the fence and back along the bench to the right of the photograph." "They would have been coming back towards you?" "Yes." "You were stationary or moving forward along the path?" "We moved forward along the path, then we stopped as we saw them." "Did they pass you?" "They did pass us, yes." "How close did they get to you?" "About 7 foot." "Did they remain on the path or not?" "I couldn't tell you exactly. When they saw us, they started to veer out slightly at an angle. We then saw something had happened. Our priority was to see what had happened." The defence team for Girl X will now ask Miss Weiss some questions. "Do I understand that a trip to Linear Park walking the dogs is a regular part of your life?" "Yes, it is, daily." "On that Saturday in February, what you and your husband noticed was how quiet it was?" "Yes." "Because is Saturday a busier day than a weekday for dog walkers?" "Yes." "You would expect to see a number of people in the same area you were?" "Yes." "Sometimes people would be walking in that farmer's field as well?" "Yes." "Typically this would be an area populated by a fairly large number of people?" "Yes." "When you first saw the 2 people, obviously it was before you realised what had happened, the first person you noticed was the male?" "Yes." "Then standing close by was the female?" "Yes." "You turned to look after your dogs. When you look back, is it at that point they started to move towards the field?" "We stopped twice to get our dogs. It was shortly after the second stop we saw them move across." "You hadn't had any view of the female at that point?" "I could see that she was there, but that was about it." So they walked fairly close to the dividing line between the field and pathway. At what point did they begin to move in a lollopy way? When they saw us. How long had they been on the other side? Seconds, 10, 15 seconds? So they were first moving towards you, but moving all the time, walking at first, then lolloping and moving away. When you say you were able to get a good description of the female, how far away were you at that time? About 7 feet? She stopped for approximately 8 to 10 seconds. Enough time to stare. He carried on moving. She stopped and turned. So your impression was they were trying to get away? Yes. But she paused to stop for 8 to 10 seconds. Are you sure about that? I'm sure, yeah. Mr. Pratt asked about her description of Girl X before finishing his questioning by asking, "Do you think you might be mistaken when you say the female made eye contact with you?" Absolutely not. I'm not mistaken. The defence team will now ask questions on behalf of boy Y. He says Mr. Veese described the area as eerily quiet before they came across Brianna and asks, "You didn't hear any commotion?" No. You heard nothing at all. Nothing at all. The first thing you saw was a male, and there's no dispute that male is the defendant I'm representing. You first saw the male and he was walking towards you. I thought he was walking towards me. Well, that might still be correct. Well, it turned out he wasn't walking towards me. They didn't get any closer from the spot they were at. So you are about 100 foot away. You've identified where you saw the male was. Could that still be correct? No, because he didn't get any closer. We were the ones getting closer. They didn't appear to be coming any closer to us. The defence again puts to her that boy Y could have been walking towards her. Miss Veese replies, he wasn't. It only took seconds to realise he wasn't walking. His position remained in the same position. We were getting closer. He was stationary. I know the path so well. He caught my eye and I knew he was there because I thought he'd got a dog. He didn't move. You thought he was tending to a dog. We now know that that was the body of the girl. You were reassuring the officer that you had a very good view. It was a clear day. My view was getting closer and clearer all the time, yes. So these arms that are out, you didn't see a large knife in either of them, did you? No. I assume you're a dog lover? Yes. If you're a dog lover, you don't like some owners being unkind to their dogs. You didn't see anything from this man. You didn't see him do anything towards what you believe to be a dog which caused you any concern. You didn't see any violence or any aggression? No. And you didn't hear any commotion or any noise? No. It was silence, wasn't it? Yes. She is asked about the girl. I was aware the female was with him from quite early on. The first time I saw her, she was on his left, my right. So I've asked whether you saw something in the hands of the male when he was stooping down or bending over what we now know to be the body of the girl. I'm going to ask you what you could see when they go into the field. They go into the field to your right and do a U-turn right next to you. They walked parallel to us. You said there was no real eye contact between you and the male? No. He was with his right hand up to his hood? To the side of his hood, yes. And he wasn't making eye contact? No. That was in contrast to the female. You said she stopped. Did she directly look at you? Yes. For about 8 to 10 seconds? Yes. This is what you said in the video interview. Her face, she made eye contact with me. It frightened me. Yes, it did. What was it about the stare she gave you which scared you? I think it was very unusual for someone to do that. I mean, my suspicion was already heightened because of the actions of both of them. It added to that, it was a very unusual thing to happen. You told the police you were very close to them, about 7 foot? Yes. You also told the police this. You described the woman, she was slightly ahead of him. She was slightly ahead of the male. Yes. And she looked at me. Yes. Is that when she stopped? Yes. You were asked whether you could see anything in her hands, and you couldn't. No. The prosecution has some final questions for Miss V's under re-examination. When you first saw the male, he was standing up. You thought he might be walking towards you. You now realise he wasn't. When you next saw him, he was bending down. Are you able to say how long he was bending down? As long as it would take to put a lead on a dog. He was certainly doing something with his hands. Several seconds? Yes. Did you see whether his hands touched the body, or are you unable to tell? Unable to tell. I mean, they were very close, but I'm unable to say whether they touched. When the two people are in the field, as they are walking away, the female stopped and stared at you. Yes. When she stopped and stared, had she already passed you? She was level with me. I stepped forward to make sure they saw us, and she was level with me. You said she stopped and stared, and it was very unusual. Did you catch each other's eye? Yes. Was that maintained for the full 8 to 10 seconds? No, just a couple of seconds. Who turned away first, you or her? I can't remember. There are no further questions for the witness, and she is released. We now hear from Mr. V's and his police interview. Mr. V's is shown sitting alone on the same sofa where his wife was also interviewed. He says, I looked up ahead. We were about halfway down to the bridge. I wasn't looking at anything in particular. I just saw that there were some people ahead. My concern was the dog on the lead. She was actually in the farmer's field. I stood there for a while to get her back, and once I got her back we started walking again, but I couldn't see them up ahead. I thought maybe they're walking away from us or taking a different route. Then we saw this couple in the farmer's field to the right of us, walking at quite a fast pace. Almost not quite breaking into I wouldn't call it a run, but a bit of a jog. It was a bit slower than that. Her demeanour was very furtive. He was particularly obscuring his face with the hood. They weren't making eye contact. They were taking an odd route, walking around the edge of the field but through crops. Kate said, that looks well dodgy. I kind of went, what are we going to find? I got closer. I saw some stuff. It looked like balloons or something. Kate said, is that a rubber doll? It looked like a dummy because it was an odd position and the skin colour. I didn't know if it was a person. I got Kate to hold the dog. I went up to her. She was sort of on her front. I turned to Kate. Kate realised it was a person. I went back to the girl. I said, don't worry, we're phoning the police. Hang in there. I wasn't sure what to do. I knew it was serious and it would become a crime scene. I didn't touch her bag. There was a hairbrush. I thought about moving her and maybe trying something, but the more I looked, the more I realised it was serious. There was a lot of blood. Kate had gone back to meet the police. I left the dog tethered to a tree. I was texting Kate. I texted her, are you okay? It took her a while to respond because she was on the phone to the police. I started to hear sirens. Before this, I didn't hear anything unusual. Kate said there's people ahead. I just made out some figures in the far distance. It didn't look unusual at that point. I put the dog on the lead, and it wasn't until we saw the couple in the field walking away. Mr. V said they would have been 15 to 20 yards away at this point. Kate saw them. My first thought was to get the dog on the lead. I was focusing on the dog. He says he then lost sight of them for a couple of minutes. Kate went slightly ahead and I was hanging back waiting for the dog. The initial sighting was just a figure in dark clothes. The detective asks, one figure? As I recall, yeah. He continues, I caught up with Kate and we carried on walking. I was then aware I was looking out for other people. If they've got a dog, we need to bring ours in check. All fine, nothing unusual. Then we saw them coming across the field at pace. Because the route they were taking was on an angle, hurried, furtive, covering their face, that's when I thought, that's dodgy. Mr. V says the boy was furtive and covering his face with part of his hood. I was aware they clocked us. It almost made them hasten their speed. They reacted to seeing us in that suspicious way. I thought, what's going on there? They hastened when they saw us. The detective asks, do you recall whether either of them were carrying anything? He replied, I'm not sure the man was because he was using at least one of his hands to partially cover his face. I can't say for certain. It certainly wasn't distinctive. There was a bit of, what are we going to find, then carried on walking. The detective asks, how close did you get to her? I was about 6 feet away before I went, oh my God. It took me a while for me to go, my God, it's a person.